comes to you directly. It's on your head. That's what capitation means. But since the Supreme Court back in 1895 said you can't tax an individual on their income because it's not enumerated by the census, well, then it must be an indirect tax. But then it doesn't meet the law of uniformity. And they say, well, the 16th Amendment conferred no new taxes. So if they didn't have a power to tax our income before 1913, how did they have the power to tax it after 1913? Because it gave them no new taxing authority. And the answer very simply is, it did not. Wow. Interesting stuff, huh? Everybody awake? Do I have your attention? Good, let's go on to the other. What are the real reasons for the income tax then? You got to know that. And the first person we should pay attention to is a man named Beardsley Ruml, who was the head of the Federal Reserve of New York. And in 1946, he gave this extraordinary interview to American Affairs magazine. Got any lawyers in here? You would know American Affairs magazine. It's the official magazine of the American Bar Association. And this is what Beardsley Ruml said. The most important single purpose to be served by the imposition of federal taxes is the maintenance of the dollar, which has stable purchasing power over the years. Without use of federal taxation, particularly the income tax, I might add, all other means of stabilizing inflation are unavailable. Unavailable. No ability to do it. The dollars the government takes by taxes cannot be spent by the people. You get that? You knew it. I mean, the government, all the money it takes from Americans on taxation, particularly income tax, you can't spend it. And therefore, can no longer be used to acquire things which are available for sale. Well, you knew that. Now, why is that so important? Because taxation is, therefore, an instrument of the first importance in the administration of any physical and monetary policy. Here's why. See, the first reason is to siphon money out of the economy to stabilize the dollar. Because we have a debt money system. And debt produces a secret tax called inflation. So in order to hold inflation down, because when the government is just printing up money that has no backing of anything of value, it's going to cause inflation. How do you stabilize inflation so it's only around 5%? You do it through taxes. You take all that excess money and you suck it away from the people. And there you only have 5% a year. Now look at the second reason he says. The second principal purpose of federal taxes is to attain a more equitable equality of wealth and of income, and then that would result from economic forces working alone. Let me rephrase that. That's called redistribution of the wealth. Now, if you let the free market and free economy govern things, well, that would create instability when you're creating money out of nothing, because inflation would just go crazy. So the two reasons, ladies and gentlemen, for income tax is to prevent hyperinflation, because the third part of the coup was going to guarantee we get hyperinflation. Let that sink in. And the second part is redistribution of the wealth. From the middle class to the banking class of this country. So let's look how they did. Now, there was a president, his name was Ronald Reagan, and he commissioned a congressional research service to look into the principles upon which taxation was based. Now, why did he do that? Because he commissioned 160 independent businessmen. It was called the Grace Commission after the chairman, R. Peter Grace. This is the conclusion the Grace Commission gave. Now, here's the president. He didn't know these things. This is what it said. Resistance to additional income taxes would be even more widespread if the people are aware that 100% of what is collected and absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt and by the federal government, contributions to transfer payments. In other words, all individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services that taxpayers expect from their government. Did you get that? That 100% of the income tax collected is already spent. Well, then where does the government get its money to run if it doesn't need income taxes? That's an interesting question, isn't it? And if your income taxes that you think are running the government aren't running the government, then what are they doing? That's a pretty logical question to ask. So he commissioned this federal research thing. And this is what it said. The Supreme Court, in the decision written by Chief Justice White, this is the Brushaber case, first noted the 16th Amendment did not authorize any new type of tax, nor did it repeal or revoke the tax clause in Article 1 of the Constitution, that is, the enumeration clause, by the census. The 16th Amendment is still subject to the rule of apportionment, and indirect taxes were still the subject of the rule of uniformity. Did you get what the Congressional Research Center is saying? Those rules still exist. Except we don't pay attention to it, and the IRS doesn't pay attention to it. Rather, the court found that the 16th Amendment sought to restrain the court from reviewing an income tax as a direct tax because of its close effect on underlying property. That's your income. So, this is what Congressman Ron Paul says about the same thing. The probability, it probably is not necessary for the government to tax anyone directly. It could simply print the money it needs. However, that would be too bold a stroke. For then it would be obvious to all what kind of counterfeiting operation the government is running. The present system, combining taxation and inflation, is akin to watering the milk. Too much water, and the people would catch on that the milk sucks. I have a postscript on it. It's worthless. So now, this is the growth of the federal debt and how much of our income, tax money, goes to paying the debt. And now today, ladies and gentlemen, with this new hyperinflation president, who only topped the previous record of the president before him, and then the president before him topped the record of the president before him, way back to Guns and Butter and President Johnson. That's when the real hyperinflation started. But it existed before then. And along the road, a president woke up, just like Ronald Reagan woke up. And for 2 months, he was a critic of the Federal Reserve until there was an attempt on his life. And then he never spoke about it again. There was another president. You probably haven't got the memo about this executive order. Write it down. Executive Order 11110, issued by President John Kennedy, who called for the Government Accounting Office to audit the Federal Reserve and to print up $490 million of government money backed by gold and silver. And who's going to find out how much gold existed in Fort Knox? You probably didn't get the memo about that executive order.